Emily, do we want to get started, or do you want me to wait a couple more minutes?
32, we're probably okay to get started right now if you'd like.
Great. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Renee Hartley, and I'm the ACT State Director for Utah. Next slide. So we have our agenda here. We first want to welcome you all to this training. We welcome USBE and all of the school and district test coordinators that are on the call today. Today for our agenda, we're going to discuss and go over the pre-administration and the activities there and the portals and the websites there and the resources. We're going to do an introduction and a demo of ACT Now. Then we're going to have a Q&A section time. And then we're going to have online site readiness, which we'll talk a little bit about TestNav. And then have another Q&A section after that. Some upcoming trainings that we'll have in January and February, as you'll see, are the testing and post-administration trainings. So those are upcoming. You can mark your calendars for those, and you'll be getting more information as we get closer. So we have a few housekeeping reminders, just due to the fact that we have a lot of people on the call, obviously, just to please make sure your microphone is on mute. We will have a pause, like I said, for Q&A after the ACT Now demonstration, and then another one after the site readiness. If you can, we'd ask that you would use the raise hand feature for questions so that we can address as many as possible. And also, just if you could, if you have further questions, when Livy, our moderator, moderates, you can come off mute, obviously, when she calls your name. So we just wanted to go over a few of those housekeeping reminders. So why this training is important? Well, we are really excited, first of all, that USBE has chosen to transition to ACT Now this year for the state testing program. We've had some really great feedback from users of ACT Now so far, and we believe that you all will find it very user-friendly and easy to navigate. This training is important because we want to make sure you're just comfortable with ACT Now. We also want to show you how ACT Now and TCM work together to deliver an improved ACT test administration. And then we're going to highlight some of the changes to your Utah ACT state testing website. So let's look at the difference between Pearson Access Next, or PA Next, and ACT Now. Some of the features that are the same. The ACT test itself is the same, right? That hasn't changed. The student experience will be the same. On test day, they're still going to use, TestNav like they did if they used it last year for online testing. If they'll still use TestNav. And then also using their MyACT account will not change as well. So that stays the same. They'll still use MyACT to do their non-test portions. They'll request their college choices and access their scores. So the process for requesting accommodations in TAA, or Test Accessibility and Accommodations System, and accessing scores and data files and online reporting, that's also going to remain the same. So this is what's remaining the same. And then we'll go to what's new. So what's new? Testing staff who previously used PA Next will now use ACT Now and TCM, Test Center Manager. User roles have been reconfigured. We will discuss those roles a little later in the session. You have more flexibility to add and edit user accounts throughout the administration. Resources for test administration are now built into ACT Now and TCM. We will no longer ship paper manuals and administration forms, as they're all available through one central location. Also, you will no longer need to manually order additional materials for students loaded after the student data upload deadline. If paper testing students are loaded and assigned to a test event by the additional student enrollment window, paper materials will automatically be sent to your schools. Online and paper students are added to the test room through TCM. We also have some new vocabulary that we need you to be familiar with, and you'll want to familiarize yourself with. ACT Now, again, you're going to hear that a lot today. That is the website or the application that districts and schools are going to use to manage the organizations, users, and students for the life cycle of your program's ACT test contract. ACT TCM is the app that the test center staff, this is an important distinction, this is the app that the test center staff will use to manage site details, create your test rooms, administer your test, including the verbal instructions, review ACT policies, and report all required test event details. Users are going to launch the TCM through their ACT Now accounts. Okay. When we say contract, the word contract is simply the agreement that we have between us, ACT, and the state. Sometimes it's a district, but in this case, we have a state contract in Utah. So this is the contract between Utah and ACT for the in-school administration of one or more of our products over a given period of time. The word administration means each phase within that contract. So that includes specific test events agreed to within the contract. And then lastly, test event. When we say that test event, we mean all testing activities related to a testing window, like accommodations testing or online testing, related to that single date. For example, standard time, right? Based on your administration. Additionally, some more vocabulary would be the difference between users and roles. Users are staff required to use ACT Now and or TCM to complete ACT tasks. Roles reflect user responsibilities and determine level of access in the application. It's important to know that all staff that have responsibilities on test day should be assigned the appropriate user role within ACT Now. So we have what's called the contract coordinator. This is the person with the program oversight at the highest organizational level, which in this case of the contract is USBE. This person is responsible for setting up that contract with us and within ACT Now, and is the primary contact with ACT for the administration. Then we have what's called a district test coordinator, or DTC. That's where you have district level oversight. In ACT Now, this person will access district information as well as information for their schools. Then you have a test coordinator. That person has school level oversight. This role can manage students and test event staff in ACT Now, plus all event details in TCM. For the ACT state testing, multiple individuals within your organization can be assigned as a test coordinator if appropriate. Lastly, we have the test event staff. That is your room supervisors, your room proctors, your roving proctors. This role will primarily use TCM for policy review and test day administration. All right, so as you can see, there's more than one system that is used to prepare and administer the ACT test. So let's take a moment to review these. First, TCM, what I've been saying is TCM, Test Center Manager. This is the interactive digital application that ACT testing staff will use to manage test center information and administer the ACT test. The TCM application streamlines test day activities, simplifies staff training, provides data to ACT in real time. Using TCM, room supervisors will complete their verbal instructions, their room seating charts, test timing, and logging any irregularities that may occur on test day. Test coordinators will build virtual rooms, log materials, and oversee test center activities during a test event. You will access TCM through ACT Now. So remember, TCM is used on test day, and TestNav, which we'll get to later on more, is where the students actually test in. This is the same student experience that they've had in the past years if they were online testing. Same thing, same experience. Okay. Then we have ACT Now. So ACT Now is the application used by districts and schools to manage organizations, users, and students for the life cycle of your testing contract. ACT Now is where you complete all your pre-administration activities for testing. And then we have a little bit of change to your website, which I mentioned earlier. Most resources that you'll need for administration will be found in ACT Now itself and TCM. However, we also, as you know, and if you don't know, we do have this website that's created for Utah specifically. If you don't have it, you might want to bookmark it, but this is your specific Utah ACT website. And this is where we put all the additional resources that you'll need to guide you through a successful testing journey. And now you'll notice we used to have 7 in the past. You've seen 7 steps on your site. Now, when you go to your site, you're going to see these 3. Okay, you're going to have only 3 steps, which is great. All of your pre-test, test day, and post-test resources can be found here. So I always say, anytime you have a question and you don't know where to go to find it, I would first go to this site, and it's very clear here, and we have a lot of links that'll direct you to exactly where you need to go. Okay, a few notes about creating and maintaining your user account. ACT recommends putting on your exempt list, or what they used to call whitelist, these 2 email addresses so that you don't miss system-generated notices. To associate your user account with a specific administration, someone will need to invite or tag you as a user for that administration. The state, in this case, invites the district coordinators. Then DTCs will invite their school coordinators. And then school coordinators will, of course, invite their test event staff. This structure allows you as a coordinator to manage users at your level of oversight. If you're a district test coordinator who also happens to act as the school test coordinator, your DTC role in ACT Now will allow you to manage test event staff directly. You don't need to have both roles in the system. You'll create and manage only one user account for both ACT Now and TCM. If you administer ACT National Testing and already have a TCM account, you will not need to create a new one. Simply log into ACT Now with your TCM credentials once you've been notified that your account is associated with the spring administration. If you're a district test coordinator that did not receive an email invite or have any account issues, please contact Scott. His email is on the screen, and he will work and get you further instructions to get you in. We have been working diligently the past few days to help get DTCs in and associate to state testing, but there may be a few folks out there still not able to get in, and that's okay. We will work to fix that. Again, we're super excited that you all will have the opportunity to use ACT Now this year for your state testing experience, and are just really excited that USBE has offered this opportunity to its schools and districts. Now, we are going to move on, and we're going to have Terry, the ACT Now product manager, walk you through the steps to set up your ACT Now account and prepare for an administration in the live demo environment. Here you go, Terry.
Thanks, Renee. I'm so excited to be here and to share ACT Now with everyone. We've worked pretty hard on this, and we've only been able to do it with input from all of our users under these state and district programs. So before we go ahead and dive in, I am going to reiterate a few things about having an ACT Now user account. As mentioned, someone in your parent organization must invite you to each administration through ACT Now, and this ensures the appropriate accesses are tied to your account. When you're invited, you'll be sent an email message, and if you don't have an account yet, the email will instruct you to create one. You can simply use the link in the email, or you could go directly to now.act.org and select Create Account. When you register, please use your school email address and do not create more than one user account. If you already use TCM because you administer ACT National Testing, you will not re-register. Your TCM login credentials will also be used for ACT Now. If you need to change your user email address at any time, please contact ACT and we'll be happy to assist. So here we have the ACT Now homepage. Once you've set up an account, you'll log in to begin activities for an upcoming administration, and your homepage will be laid out like this if you're a district coordinator or a school coordinator. In the header bar, which stays present on all pages, we have the ACT Now icon or logo, which just directs you right back to the homepage. We have a quick link to navigate to TCM. An administration selector bar. If your account is associated with more than one administration, you'll use this bar to toggle between them. And of course, notification and profile access. This is for system-generated notifications. In the left margin of your homepage, you'll find some basic details about your testing program, along with any relevant links. And in the center of the page, you'll see tiles laid out that are sorted in the order that you're likely to use them for the first time. Today, we'll focus on managing an administration, students, and test events. In this account, I am logged in as a district test coordinator who would have registered after being invited by USBE. My next step is to invite school test coordinators so they can register and confirm participation for their schools. To begin, I select Manage and Administration. And note that when we navigate away from the home page, a quick navigation panel appears on the left side. You can expand or collapse this panel as you wish. And the menu options are ordered in the order of use, just like they are in the home page. The organization tab is automatically selected by default, and we can see here a list of schools in the district. Schools and districts have been loaded by USBE, and I believe they are in the process of loading students. Here we can see the organization name, local organization code, organization type, the status of their participation response, and some action buttons for each. In most cases, school test coordinators will manage participation, and the district test coordinator is free to ignore the confirm buttons. However, if you are a district coordinator who is also acting as a school coordinator, you'll use the confirm to manage the participation for your school. You may also click on any button that says Edit if you wish to see the details for a school that has confirmed participation. Note that we've drilled down into the school level, and there are breadcrumbs underneath the header bar if you wish to navigate back to a district level. A quick note about local organization codes. Each of these codes is assigned by your state, and if you use file upload to invite users, you'll use the appropriate local organization code listed here for each person in your file. And now that we know where to find the codes, we'll go ahead and move on to inviting test coordinators to the administration. There are two ways to do this in ACT Now. The first is to select the Users tab, and you can select Invite Individual and complete the required fields. This is a really handy tool when you only need to invite 1 or 2 people. And the other option, if you have a larger group, is the file upload. You'll select the Files tab and then select User's Invite. You will not use the organization invitation. Once you've gotten to the User's Invite tab, you'll open the ACT Now guidelines for this file type, use the downloadable template, and together you'll compile your file. And then you'll go ahead and upload. I do have a file ready, so we'll go ahead and load that. File processing is relatively fast, but if frequent interruptions are part of your day, you can leave the page or the application, and the system will notify you by email when your file is done processing. If you prefer to wait on the page, click refresh until the results of the upload appear here. As we can see, 6 rows are saved. To view those saved records, we just go back to the Users tab. And here we can see all of the school test coordinators that were invited, their names, email, organization names, the roles that were assigned, and the account status for each. For any school in your district where the test coordinator is a shared responsibility, you may assign the school test coordinator user role to more than one person at the same school. And since ACT Now is designed to provide you with visibility, there are tools to help your team stay on track as each administration approaches. There are filters that are appropriate to each page. And there are column options. You can select or deselect columns as you wish to customize your view. ACT Now also offers a send reminder feature. With this, you can generate an email to invited users who don't appear to have active accounts yet, or you can remind school coordinators who have not yet confirmed participation. Use of this feature is optional. Once you've invited school test coordinators, they can begin their activities, which we'll look at next from a test coordinator's user account. Okay, as a school test coordinator, you'll use the administration page to manage your participation and invite room supervisors and proctors to the administration, and they'll be invited with the test event staff role. To get started, simply select Manage and Administration. And on the administration page, you'll see only the details that pertain to your school, plus a deadline to respond. And you'll just click the Respond button to begin. If you happen to have student body with no eligible students for the upcoming administration, then you'll decline participation and enter a reason why. Otherwise, you'll confirm participation and select Continue. You'll select the earliest testing window that you plan to test and your preferred receipt week for test materials. On step 3, you'll name a primary test coordinator. As mentioned, ACT Now allows more than one person at the same school to be assigned the school test coordinator user role. However, ACT does ask that you name one person as a primary contact. So here's where you'll enter that information. And then you'll appoint a shipping contact. If it's the same as the primary test coordinator, just simply use the checkbox, or you can enter data if they are different. And the final step to confirm participation is to simply review the shipping address and apply edits as needed. Once you've confirmed all of your details, your selected details appear here. You do have an edit option. So if anything changes, you can come back in and you can edit your response through the deadline that is displayed here in the application. Once you've confirmed, next you'll go ahead and invite your users, and you'll use the same steps that were just described. So you can invite an individual if you want to invite people one at a time, or you can use the file upload. Once you've invited users, you'll move on to managing students. Students are being uploaded in bulk by USB-E, and you'll review these records. To streamline your review, you'll have the options, again, to narrow the results with filters on the students page. And as you review the data of the students listed on your school page, if you wish to deselect columns to simplify the view and make your review easier, you are free to do that. If you need to make correction to your list of students, you can edit a record or you can unenroll a student. You select the drop-down arrow and the appropriate option. Please note that unenroll student will delete the student record from ACT Now. If you accidentally delete a record, you are able to re-add the student with the Add New Student option. If you wish to just look at the details of a student record, you can select the student name, and full details will be displayed here, including a TAA PIN if the student is approved for accommodations and their record has been matched up. You can also enter the edit mode from this student card if you so choose. If a student will test under non-college reportable conditions, then you must edit the individual student record to flag the student as an NCR accommodation. And when you do, you'll also select the appropriate materials for that student. Please note, NCR items are the only materials that you will need to request. And as mentioned, if you need to add a student, if an eligible student is not on your list, you may use Add New Student to create an individual record and simply complete the fields and save. When you're done editing your student list, the last step is to make sure students are assigned to test events. Student event assignment is critical for two reasons. The first is that ACT Now will automatically create materials orders based on the details of each student record, including the event to which each student is assigned. So to ensure you receive materials for all students testing, you must assign them to events by the deadlines listed on your schedule of events. Second, only test events with students assigned to them are created in TCM. So in ACT Test Center Manager, you will need to have students assigned before you'll see events listed there. If you launch TCM before adding students to an event, you'll see an error message, and then you'll just want to navigate back and get some students assigned. If the majority of your students will test during the same window, you can select all the records and then deselect as needed. You can also change the number of records that appear on the page up to 100 records. Please take note of the pagination. If you have more than one page, then you'll be able to navigate through them here. Once you've selected all the records that you need to assign to an event, then just select Event Assignment and choose the event that applies. Hit Save, and their assigned event will be displayed here in the interface. And you can narrow those down. If you assign according to certain categories or to certain events, then you can select a test event to display only the results that apply to that one. Okay, once you've assigned students, a few weeks before your first test event, you'll begin site setup in TCM. And we'll go ahead and go back to an account. Go to an account that has TCM already set up. In ACT Now, when you're ready to start setting up for a test event, you'll go to the Test Events page and you'll launch TCM. And your TCM homepage will look something like this. TCM will be covered in much greater detail in your January and February training, so we'll just hit some highlights today. As stated, TCM will replace paper administration manuals and the majority of your paper administration forms, so it will be used by all site staff, test coordinators, paper and online room supervisors, proctors, and roving proctors. Your homepage is where you'll access your test event assignments and ACT policies. Note that these ACT policies give your team 24/7 access to ACT information. As long as a staff member is assigned to a role in TCM, then they can access these policies. Additional guidance on setup and administering the test is all built into other pages within the application. When you're ready to start setting up a test event, you'll come into TCM and you'll navigate to the event and you'll use the test event checklist. There's a pre-test checklist and a post-test checklist. You'll then create TCM rooms, and these are just virtual digital representations of your physical space. You will assign staff to rooms. You'll assign examinees to rooms, and you'll print paper rosters for test day check-in. If you're administering online testing, you'll print student authorization tickets prior to test day as well. On test day, you'll be able to monitor all of the rooms at your test center from this dashboard. You can watch the progress of each room, and if anything seems amiss, then you know which room to go visit. If you happen to be a test coordinator who takes a room or runs a room as a room supervisor, from this All Rooms dashboard, you can drill into any room that you need. And this is the room dashboard that test center staff, the room supervisors, and room proctors will see on test day. Their room dashboard will provide verbal instructions, nonverbal actions, the ability to manage their room roster, mark students absent or denied, online testing management for the online rooms, digital seating charts, and submitting irregularities to ACT in real time. Details about TCM setup prior to test day and the test day experience for room supervisors will be covered in great detail in January and February. And I believe this concludes the demo of ACT Now and Introduction to TCM. So I'm going to turn this over to Livy, our Senior Manager in Operational Contract Fulfillment, to cover to facilitate our Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Thank you for a great demonstration. And we've been monitoring chats coming in, and I see that people are active in the system and certainly trying to get some tasks done. Appreciate all the questions that are coming in. I do want to note that there might be some technical issues that we're seeing with ACT Now. There have been a couple of questions about the respond button not being available. So if that's your situation, we are taking that back to our technical teams to try to figure out what's going on. So we will respond to you when we have more information, if that's your particular situation. Also, quite a few questions coming in about your user accounts. So if you have created a TCM or an ACT Now account and are not associated with a school yet, you'll want to make sure that you are checking in with your district test coordinator, that they have added you as a user and that it is the same email address that you use for that account. I'm just reviewing to see if we have any hands up for questions. I see Alyssa Griffin.
Yeah, I am the main district coordinator. And so I don't know why I have ACT Now. I set it up earlier. I'm all good. But TCM says I'm not tied to a test center. Do you know why that would be happening?
Terry, would you have an answer to that?
I do. Have you assigned any students to a test event yet? That's typically the culprit.
Okay, so it said no. So I just saw that in here. So we are already ready that we can assign them to a test event.
If you have students listed when you go to the students page in ACT Now, yes, you can begin to assign them to test events.
Okay, all it says is I have 74 confirmed, but nothing listed. Oh, it says student 74 not confirmed, but there's no list of students. Am I missing something?
No, that's okay. I think I missed something in your question. You're probably are you looking at the list of schools in your district on the administration?
Organization name, and if I go to, then students, there's no students. Okay. Should we have students already?
They might not be loaded yet. Livy, is this something we need to look into and get back to?
I think so. Yep. A USB has loaded some students. I think we had some errors we're still working through, but a majority of the students did get loaded. So if you are having issues not seeing some students in your school, it could be that they're kind of caught up in that error, but a majority did. Also want to note we're not going to be able to get to everybody's technical issues today. So I do want to let you know that our standard customer care will be available to help work through your issues individually. Staff are well trained on ACT Now. It's going to be your same customer care number that you're used to, the 800-553-6244, extension 2800. So again, they'll be able to work closely with you individually as you go through your accounts.
Okay, but is this something I contact the state with or you at ACT?
And that was not seeing students, correct? So that was your
yes
issue. Yeah, we will get back with you. This is Alyssa, right? We will check in on that for you, and we'll work either USBE will get back with you or one of the ACT representatives will get back with you some follow-ups.
Okay, thanks.
On that, yeah.
This is Jessica with USBE. If you have a question in the chat that has not received a response, please feel free to come off of mute and ask your question now, because it's probably something somebody else needs to know.
Okay, I see a hand up from Natalie.
Hey, if I do not have the schedule event tile, should I be worried about that since I am the only test person in my school?
The test event tile, you said, or the schedule tile?
Maybe it's sorry, going back there. I have administration, students, and test events. It's the schedule one. You're right.
Okay, yeah,
Do
no need to worry about not having the schedule tile. Your schedule of events is actually posted to the ACT hosted webpage, and that's going to be your source of truth.
Okay, thank
So
you.
not seeing the schedule in ACT Now is not a concern at this point. Any other questions right now? Yes, gentlemen.
This might be a question for USBE staff, but I'm wondering if we can do paper testing for one more year. And if so, do we need to declare that somewhere?
Scott or Jessica, is that something you can address?
This is Scott. I can address that. This is the last year for paper testing. And so for this year in spring of 24, you can still do paper testing if you wish. But next year, spring of 25 will be online only, except for students that need a paper accommodation. I have that on their 504 or their IEP.
So is there somewhere that we need to specify that we're planning on doing paper testing for one more year?
Well, actually, an ACT now, and ACT correct me on that, but you pick whether or not you're going to be testing with paper or online there when you assign the students to testing event.
Correct, Scott, that is the case. Students would be assigned to a paper format in ACT Now. So Natalie, you'll still be, just gentlemen, right? You'll still be able to assign students to a paper format, and ACT will ship paper test materials for students that are assigned in the paper format.
We do strongly encourage moving to online, though. However, we do not receive anything but positive feedback when LEAs make the transition. And then we also speak to other states, and moving from paper to online is always a positive transition for the student experience and for the LEA experience.
That is quite true, Jessica. We hear people go to online testing and they don't go back to paper. They find the experience, both users and students, to be very beneficial. You might think about maybe doing a small group if you're very, very hesitant for online testing. You might think of doing a smaller group, maybe your makeup testing as online as your first practice for this year, so that next year you can be 100% online. Just a suggestion. Right, Natalie Helmut, your hands up.
I have one student who really wants to do paper, but for the most part, we want to do online. Are we allowed to do one person on paper and the different, as long as they're in different rooms?
Yes, paper students do need to test separate from online testing. And based on what Scott and Jessica just said, yes, paper testing is still allowed this year for your standard time students. So yes, you should be able to assign one student to paper. They'll need to be set up in a different test room.
Okay.
And I know that's just, that's different for us. I know in the past you either had to pick paper or online, but with the ACT Now system, you can actually differentiate and assign specific students either paper or online, and that's okay. It's a nice little perk of moving to this system from Pearson Access Next.
And Scott, is that without qualifying accommodation for just the springs?
This year, yes. This year they can do paper without accommodations. You can just do a regular ACT paper test. But next year, it's only kids that can take paper next year are the kids that have it as an accommodation.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Butler, I see your hands up.
Yes, will this recording be available to us, and do you know when, if it will be?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, it will be available, and Emily can say when because she's the one that's going to have to make the recording.
I'm sorry,
This
can you repeat
meeting-
that one more time?
This is being recorded, and I will try to have it up on our YouTube channel tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Do users have access to the TCM? That's a repeated question. I'm not sure if that's been addressed.
Users should have access to TCM. Terry, is there any reason why a user would not be able to access TCM right now? Is there something that we might not be thinking of?
The only two things I can think of are, no, actually everybody should have access to TCM.
So
Is
if you
it
have an ACT Now
yeah.
account, so you've been invited to ACT Now, you should be able to get into TCM using that same login information. Right, so I'm just wondering if some of the questions we're getting in is maybe a user hasn't been invited quite yet.
No, because that was my problem too. I'm in ACT now, but not TCM.
So you would navigate to the test events page. If you should see that on your home page, and then there should be a launch TCM button. But if you're not seeing that, I believe we need to investigate.
Yeah, we'll take a look at this. If you are continuing to have problems, if you just want to go ahead and maybe put your name and the issue you're seeing in the chat, and we'll be tracking the chat questions and be able to get back with you. Okay. Got another staff member in the room helping me here who believes that there might be a catch in the system if you have not accepted your invitation to ACT Now, that might prevent you from getting into the TCM.
And so this may be related. We mentioned, Libby mentioned very early on, the question about the ability to respond button. So it may be related. If you're experiencing that issue, and we noted a couple of you I have noted a couple of you don't have that respond button. So we are following up with team members on the ability to respond, and then that hopefully ties very closely to the ability to access TCM. The early activity that you need to be focusing on is the activity in ACT Now. So I love that you're jumping the gun and getting into TCM, but not jumping the gun. You are being very proactive. That's good. But we will dig into trying to understand why some of you aren't seeing the respond button, and hopefully that's a correlation to not being able to access TCM, and we'll follow up with you.
So one thing for all the people on here, make sure that you're watching your assessment director memos, and make sure that you tune into an assessment director meeting next week on Thursday, because Scott and Jessica will be providing multiple updates of this as it goes on and as things continue to investigate. So it's really important that you start reading your AD memos every single week, and make sure that you attend assessment director meetings, or at least follow up and watch the recorded trainings every single week after we have them on Thursdays, once a month on Thursday.
Great, Kim, thanks for sharing that. And ACT will try to get as much information as we can to you for those memos, those trainings. So ACT and USB will work closely together. Okay. Again, flurry of activity. We love that you're getting into the system, getting working, and we're going to get these issues resolved so it'll be even smoother. I'm not seeing any other hands up or direct questions coming in that we can respond to. So I think we'll go ahead and move over and start talking about ACT online tech readiness. So I'm going to transition over to my colleague, Katie Owen, who will talk us through online testing.
Thanks so much, Libby. You heard my voice earlier because I couldn't help myself. I chimed in to help answer a question. So glad to have you all on the line with us today. I am here to talk about preparing for the ACT taken online. As Scott said, it's not a requirement this year, but boy, do we certainly, and Jessica agrees, we certainly think that online testing is, we hear that online testing is really good for students, and a good opportunity to get started and transitioning to online testing this year before it's required next year. So setting up for TestNav and testing online, the technical readiness and technical technical configurations, that hasn't changed very much this year. You're seeing the changes in ACT Now and TCM, but the TestNav experience is actually going to stay very much the way it has been in past years. So if you've tested online before, a lot of this is going to be really familiar. The details that I'm talking about today here, and a couple of screens will be really visible. These details will be in the technical guide for online testing. But I'm going to dig into talking about TestNav. So as Renee mentioned, TestNav is the application that you will be downloading and installing onto students' devices that students will use to take the ACT online. It provides a locked down environment for the secure test administration. This screen here, the hardware recommendations, I'm not going to read all of these recommendations. You can grab a screenshot, watch the recording, or check the technical guide for information about the TestNav hardware recommendations. A few key things that I do want to call out here. In order for Chromebooks to be used for online testing, they must be used with a keyboard and a mouse or touchpad, and they must be in kiosk mode. Tablet mode refers to using the device as a touchscreen device without a keyboard and mouse or touchpad attached, and this is not allowed on any device. And Linux devices are not supported at this time. I should have done a check. I think you're all seeing my screen. Yes, excellent. Here, okay, good. The next set of requirements here, these are also in the technical guide. These are the software requirements for TestNav. Take a look at the operating system requirements for Chrome, Mac, iOS, and Windows. And then a really important feature here is the exempt list URLs and ports that you must give permission to. These are URLs and ports that must be exempt listed, or we used to call this whitelisting, or opened in any firewalls, proxy servers, or software used for internet content filtering or inspection. Exempt listing will allow all test item types to flow and display into TestNav. This is a really important piece. TestNav undergoes occasional updates, and there was an update before this school year. So the TestNav app that you will need to be sure you have is the TestNav app version 1.12.x here, because there are some small releases that don't actually impact, but version 1.12 is the version that you need for ACT online testing. Make sure that you've got that app downloaded onto all of the student devices that will be used for testing. You will receive an error message, and you won't be able to test if you don't have the latest version of TestNav. So you'll download TestNav at download.testnav.com. We're going to talk through TestNav installation for the several different operating systems here. So for Windows, the TestNav installation starts by selecting the windows.msi installer, selecting the file you want to download or save, or save and open it if that's required by your browser. When you get the open file security warning message appears and asks if you want to run TestNav, and you will select to run the app. The installer window opens and appears to automatically install TestNav. Pretty straightforward app installation in Windows. In Mac OS, when you're downloading TestNav, you'll need to go to download.testnav.com and select download TestNav for another platform, and select Mac OS, and then open the file you downloaded. The TestNav install window will appear, and you'll select install, and then drag the icon into the applications folder on the devices or on your console, and then eject the TestNav installer from your devices from your desktop. For iPads, launching or installing TestNav, you'll launch the App Store. Again, from the App Store, you'll search for TestNav and Git, and then after the app installs, you'll select Open and OK. You will have to select OK to allow TestNav to access the microphone, and OK to allow TestNav to access the camera. Note that for the ACT test, the app is not actually going to use the microphone or camera, but that is part of the device configuration and it's a requirement. So even though that is not going to activate during the ACT test, it is something that the app needs permission to access in order for the app to function. Once you have selected OK for both of those messages, you'll see the message preparing the iPad for testing and will take a few minutes. And then once the setup completes, you'll select the app to launch TestNav. And here we go, Chromebook. So when you're installing TestNav on Chromebook, you will sign into the admin console and you'll use your administrator account. And this is a question that we have occasionally gotten. So this is not an email account that ends in @gmail.com. So use your admin account to log into the Google Admin Console for your domain. From that Google Admin Console homepage, go to Devices and Chrome, select Apps and Extensions, and then select Kiosks. On the left of the installer window, select the top level organization for which you want to configure settings, and then select a child organization if needed. Your admin console might look slightly different, but those are the general steps that you'll need to follow. When you're installing for Chromebook, you'll select Add and select Add from Chrome Web Store. Important to note that don't download the TestNav app from Google Play. Google Play installs the Android app, not the Chrome operating system app. So when you're installing on Chromebooks, make sure that you are actually going from the Chrome Web Store. You'll search for TestNav and select. And then if you're prompted, you'll accept the app permissions and set the app and extension policies, save, and then run the TestNav app check. So the next thing I'm going to dig into here is running that app check. Once TestNav has been installed on each examinee's device, run that app check. For Chromebooks, you'll need to run the app check in kiosk mode, or you'll need to open the app in kiosk mode and then run the TestNav app check. To run the app check from the TestNav, where do you want to go screen, select the ACT on that customer selection screen. If you administer only the ACT, or if this is the first time you're accessing TestNav since it was updated or installed, you will be in this screen here, and so you'll open to this screen here and select the ACT. But if you administer more than one test using the TestNav app, the user dropdown will allow you to choose a different customer, and then you'll be able to select the ACT from the list. Once you've selected the ACT to run the app check, use that user dropdown to select app check and then run that check. A green success message will appear if the system passed, or a red failure message will appear if the system failed. If the system failed, run through the technical readiness guide or the technical guide to do any do any troubleshooting and check and make sure that your domains and ports are exempt listed and you're running in kiosk mode and all of those tech guide troubleshooting steps, and then run that app check again to get that green success message. After you run the app check, you should run the network check, and that's actually done in the same location in TestNav as the app check. So selecting the ACT, using the user dropdown to select app check, and then run that network check. And when you're running the network check, you will select you need to run the network check only once, and you'll select the number of computers you plan to administer a test on, and then select Start Diagnostics Test, and that'll do a test of your bandwidth to see how your bandwidth will hold up to the number of devices that will be testing at the same time. This is the mock test is a place where there is a slight difference between the way online testing functioned in Pearson Access Next and now the way online testing will function with ACT Now and TestNav. Instead of setting up a mock administration yourself, so instead of you logging in to set up a mock administration and do all the work to generate the mock student information and get those sessions all set up, ACT is going to provide that to you directly. This is such an important step. The mock test is such an important step that we want to make sure you've got everything you need to run that mock test, to do that technical readiness test. We want it to be at your fingertips. So ACT will be sending you the resources you need to run that mock test. An email, a tech readiness email in December is when that information will come. We'll provide username, password, and seal codes for all of the subject tests. We'll provide that information for one student. So you really just need to run one mock test. Once you've done all of the appropriate exempt listing for the ports and URLs, you've downloaded the TestNav app, run the app and network checks, that's the time for you to run the mock test. Please run the mock test on the type of device that students will use on test day. To verify your technical readiness then on the type of device that students will use, launch the TestNav app and enter the login credentials that ACT will provide via email, and answer at least 5 questions per subject test before submitting each section. So get a good test, and you don't need to sit down to take the whole test and run a timed ACT test. You just need to answer, get a good test in each subject to run through a sample of those questions. Once you've run the mock test, once you've done your configuration and you've got everything, you've confirmed that everything's working in your system for online testing, then we'll ask that you freeze the configuration. So you'll freeze your test environment until online testing is finished at your school. So that would include don't accept any operating system updates, and don't install new software. Be really mindful that the configurations you test are the configurations that exist on are the configurations that will exist on test day. It is important to note that all devices that will be used for testing must be administrator controlled. So I ran through that information really quickly, and I'm gonna hand it back to Libby to facilitate Q&A for this portion. So if you've got questions about online testing, now's the time.
Yep. Thank you, Katie, running through that with us. Again, not much is changing for online testing for everybody. So if you've done the tech readiness before, you should be set for this year. We certainly recommend still running that mock administration though. Every year it's important to run that to just make sure that there hasn't been any changes to your systems. And then key also is freezing your testing environment so you don't have any updates that download. I know we had from the ACT Now section, quite a few of you, unfortunately, that are not seeing the respond button. We've got our teams here at ACT researching that to see what's going on. Might have an update for you later today. Like I said, we've got teams working through that right now for you. Does anybody have questions for online testing? So the mock administration, how many students would that be?
Yep, ACT is going to provide you information to run a mock administration for one student. The key for the mock administration, the reason we're providing one student rather than asking you to run a mock administration with the same number of tests or devices that you'll be using on test day. The network check is going to help you test your bandwidth and capacity, so you'll know how many devices can be testing at one time. That network check is that piece to test capacity, system network capacity. The mock test we're just asking you to run a mock test with one student, and that is really to make sure that your configurations, your whitelisted configurations, URLs and ports, that all of that is configured correctly, that there aren't any other behind the scenes system device configurations that will create problems within the whitelisting, exempt listing domains and ports. And if just doing one student, a mock test with one student will test that. If you feel like you need to do more mock tests, or if you feel like, or if you try a mock test and it doesn't work, ACT's customer support team will have access. They can certainly provide an additional student or 5 to run a mock test for. But the key thing for the mock test is to get in and confirm that your configurations are completed correctly. That network check is going to be the key to make sure your capacity is good. Mock administration, great question from Gay in the chat. Mock administration is different than a practice test. The mock administration is in lorem ipsum. It's in gibberish. It's not a test that your students can sit down for as a practice test. So no need to get students involved in that mock test. For practice tests, there certainly is the ability to run a practice test in the TestNav app. On that login screen is the ability, you click on practice test and you can have your students do a full practice test. So that would be a great thing to work into your students preparing for test day, but not something that will be used to check technical readiness.
Great, thank you, Katie. I don't see any hands up at this point. Is there anybody that does want to ask a question to the group?
I see in the chat from Jenna, Libby did mention this, but I do just want to make a note that if you've been testing online for a couple of years, sounds like you mostly need to update TestNav. That's true. You definitely need to update TestNav, but we also ask that you do the exempt listing of the ports and URLs and make sure that that is all configured again for this spring. Definitely want you to do those test site readiness steps, those technical readiness steps, to avoid any sort of do everything we can to avoid any technical issues on test day. And if though those exempt listing steps are not done correctly, it could cause a disruption on test day. So definitely need to make sure you've got the right version of the app. Also, don't skimp on the technical readiness steps. It's pretty straightforward this year, and so we definitely want to make sure you do those checks.
Just in general, what would a mock administration be? We've thrown that term out quite a bit, so maybe a little bit more definition about what a mock administration is.
Great question. Yes, we should all be operating with the same definition. I'm sorry for not level setting. So mock administration is it's I'm going to use the word sample test, and that's not quite right. A mock administration is really just a test that you launch in TestNav to do a check of your systems and make sure that the items will render correctly, that the TestNav questions will show up in your app correctly. It's not an opportunity for a practice test. It's not something that you really need to get your proctors involved in. ACT is going to send the mock test information to one mock test per school. So it's not something that you need to get a whole bunch of different staff or students involved in. Really just the technical coordinator working with the test coordinator to make sure that that mock test and all of the configurations are done correctly. A check of your systems to make sure that things will have the greatest chance for success.
So it's really testing the TestNav app itself and how it is configured with your local systems. So it's not really a practice test because, as Katie said, it's in a foreign language. So once you do get in there, you're going to quickly see that it's not a practice test. Again, we're just trying to make sure that all of your systems are lined up and work correctly with TestNav. Okay, we've had some really good questions. We'll hold the line for a little bit longer to see if anybody does have anything more they want to ask. Like I said, we have seen a couple of questions come through about the ACT now, so we are researching those for you. Our customer care line stays the same. So you've been used to calling the 800 number, that stays the same. So 1-800-553-6244, extension 2800. Option 4 there does give you directly to our ACT Now customer care representatives. Anybody that you get should be able to help, but those that are specifically trained to answer ACT Now questions will be available on that option 4. Okay. I'm not seeing any more hands up or questions coming in via chat. I know we've got a little bit more time, but I'm not going to force us all to sit here if we all feel comfortable with where we are. Renee, I don't know if you want to give us a final wrap up, or if anybody at USBE would like to.
Sure.
say a few
Yeah,
things.
yeah, I appreciate that, Livy, and I appreciate everyone today being on and working through this and doing a great overview. I know it's a new program, and I know a lot of you are going to still have questions, and we are, you know, very willing to get you guys in the right place and get you the right help. So again, we're just going to say reach out to first your district test coordinator if you're a school test coordinator to make sure that you've been associated and invited and all that good stuff. And then for your district test coordinators, if you guys are having issue, just make sure that you can first maybe reach out to Scott and make sure you guys are set up there properly. And then of course, if we can't get an answer there, we're going to contact customer. You can contact customer care. But some of the issues from today's call, we'll work on our end and make sure we have a clear understanding and solution, and get back with the department so they can share if it's needed. And again, we just appreciate all the questions and you guys being willing to work with us this year on implementing ACT Now. We're really excited about it. I think you guys are going to have a really good experience, and I do hope to hear back from everyone come the spring when we have to test. But I'll turn it over to Kim or Scott or Jessica at USB if you guys have anything else you want to add to close this out. And if not, that's fine too.
Nothing else to add. Thank you so much for the training and for the time. And so far, seems like it's been working really well. I get on the system and I keep seeing more and more school level people being added to the system. So, and no, as far as I know, I can't tell because I'm actually driving right now. But so far, no complaints on or problems coming back to me on email. Thank you so much for this. And we look forward to having that be a good year.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. I think there's just one more thing. I noticed Katie responded. The question from Gay, is mock administration different than the practice test, right? And Katie responded, correct. Remember, we do have a practice test option that is completely different than the mock test. The mock test is just the system check. That's making sure your systems are compatible and ready to go for test day, and not something you want students to participate in. So I just want to reiterate that because I know sometimes the terminology is confusing. But yeah, good question. And again, if you guys have any other questions, you know, again, go through your school test coordinator, your district test coordinator, and then they will definitely get in touch with us if it's something that's we can address as a bigger issue. We appreciate everyone, and I will close this out and just say thank you again, and have a great evening.